Writer says, when a kid has a birthday party and receives a gift they don't like, the parents tell them to say thank you. And so the kid learns to lie and trade imitation love. What would be a better way for the child and the parents to handle this kind of situation? You can really carry the truth-telling too far. You really can. The idea of telling the truth is to create situations where you can feel seen, accepted, and loved. To be brutally honest in social situations, watch the movie Liar, Liar with Jim Carrey. It doesn't work very well. And, you know, saying thank you isn't a lie in this particular case. Saying thank you is kind of an expected social skill. It's even a kindness. So notice that the child doesn't have to say, "Oh, I love it." Yeah, that'd probably be closer to a lie. And so what you do is you explain to a kid that it's just simply kind to thank people for the gift. It's not a lie. And that what the kid is doing is expressing gratitude for the giving of the gift, the thoughtfulness, if not necessarily for the gift itself. There are some social skills that everybody just understands, or social niceties. I've been working lately with a lady who's really never had a long-term full-time job because she's just been incapacitated emotionally. And lately she got offered a full-time job. I've talked about her before, I think last week and the week before. She's doing very well. And we're actually practicing social skills because nobody ever taught her any. And she's been so afraid of life that she's been too afraid to notice them and just, you know, pick them up as most people do going through school. So she's asked, you know, what do I do when I go into work in the morning? You look into people's eyes as you walk in, as you meet them, as you cross paths, and say, "Good morning, how are you?" She said, "Well, but I don't care how they are." I believe you. But it's an accepted social skill to practice. And as you do, eventually you'll get to where you do care. If you skip all the social niceties, you end up kind of ostracized and alone. So we don't need to be unnecessarily and brutally truthful with everybody, or to just do things our way. Here's somebody who says, how do you continue to give the benefit of the doubt and trust your significant other when they continually lie to you and they're not their true selves around you? When is enough enough? This is the subject of a great deal of the Real Love and Marriage book. Whole sections on, you know, when do you stay in a relationship, when do you leave? I suggest you read that. But let's just summarize the bottom line. If you're married, you made a commitment to stay with somebody for a lifetime. So then you try real love with that person for as long as possible, as long as you can do it, as long as you can, and nobody can tell you what you can or can't do. And if the result of practicing loving this person who wants nothing to do with a loving relationship ends up being a crushing burden from a partner who is dishonest or manipulative, then you have a decision to make about whether to stay in the relationship. But just because they're not enlisted in specifically the principles of real love, you can still have a pretty loving relationship without their doing that. But the question is staying married to this person so difficult that you can't really move forward yourself, that it makes not only the marriage impossible as far as happiness goes, but it makes your own progress impossible. And then maybe quitting is the answer. If you're not married and things are this difficult, get out. learn to feel loved and be loving and start over. If you want to start over with the same person who's also learned about real love, great. Or just start over, period. It's just too difficult to learn the principles of unconditional love when you're with a partner who's that big a burden. If you wonder whether it's the right thing to do, go online on the website, and there's go to the top and look under services and people to love you, I think it's called, and you'll find a list of people who could at least just kind of walk you through it. I almost never tell somebody to stay in a relationship or leave. That's up to you, but at least they can just kind of think out loud with you and possibly give you some ideas, or sometimes just support to help you as you make your own choice. There was a parent, I was sent this, and I'm not really sure where it came from, who was writing on a Facebook page somewhere on the internet, not the Real Love Facebook page, just somewhere. And she wrote this. She said, Amy, her daughter, 4 years old, and her sister, Alicia, also her daughter, were recently in an argument. And Alicia was shouting at her little sister and calling her names. But Amy said, you are angry, and your anger is yours. You're feeling bad about yourself, and when you feel better, we can talk nicely. The mother says, I couldn't believe how calm this 4-year-old responded. This is a 4-year-old who's saying this. Just as surprising was that Amy wasn't just repeating something I told her. She was saying in her own way what she understood as a result of our studying the book Real Love and Parenting in family meetings. Mind you, this is on a Facebook site somewhere out in the ether. The mother says she handled her older sister's anger with such maturity, better than most adults that I know. And then she says, I got all this from the book Real Love and Parenting. She says, it's useful for parenting, but I found many parts of it relatable to general growth as a person. One of the first concepts tackled in the book is anger, owning and accepting that anger is a choice. And that choice belongs solely to the person choosing to be angry. In other words, nobody can make you angry. I found this difficult to digest at first. I actually initially thought this book was a load of crap, and I can give you lots of examples about how something or someone made me angry. But I thought, and I kept reading, and I thought about the examples, and I don't really remember when it dawned on me, but I realized, dang, this is true. Anger's a choice. One's own choice. Nobody can make you angry. This is pretty brilliant realization from somebody who doesn't have a group, has never been to a seminar, never watched a video chat, just found the book, who knows, in the garbage can somewhere, and figured it out by reading, was honest enough to see the principles of the book in her own life. The whole world lives by, you make me angry. Everybody believes that. As you live real love and you share it with people, you're going to get a great deal of opposition to that concept. People, anger is sacred to people. They'll do anything to protect their right to be angry. But you just live what you believe. It's true. Don't doubt it. Live by it. Show people that it's true. And as you show people that anger is a choice, they'll believe you much more readily than if you simply say it. It's spreading. People are learning true principles. Here's a man who wrote, yesterday was rough. I'm not feeling good. I'm tired all the time. Dark clouds filled my sky. It was so tempting to engage in arguments with people. I really understand that place. You can get into a place that is just so dark and awful so easily. He continues, this morning I continued to dabble in that anger, but then I made a conscious decision not to indulge the anger or darkness anymore. I rebounded to being happy and hopeful by the time I got to work in less than half an hour. That's very impressive. We really can choose. we really don't choose so much the thoughts that pop into our head. Notice he started with dark clouds filled my sky. Okay, that happens. You think a vengeful, angry thought. That happens. But then we get to choose what to do with them. And then he continues, just like in the movie Marathon Man. I don't know if you've seen this movie. It's kind of a classic. Dustin Hoffman, and the whole story doesn't matter, but at one point there's this German guy played by Laurence Olivier, if I remember, and he's torturing him with a dental drill. Man, I mean, everybody watching the movie is just sitting there just quivering, especially in the days when this movie was done. When I was a kid, my teeth were drilled with no anesthetic. Those of us from those days remember what this feels like. So being tortured, I'm sitting there sweating in my chair when I was a kid. And then the dentist periodically, to dull the pain before he continued with the next questioning, he would give him something to dull his pain called the essence of cloves or clove oil. I don't know why this works. It doesn't get rid of headaches, but if you put it right on a tooth where there's a cavity, it really does get rid of the pain. I remember this as a kid. The writer continues, the guy writing to me, says the cloves stopped the pain almost immediately. The essence of cloves for me was this: faith, truth, and the power of choice. I couldn't have done any of that without the overarching belief that I am loved and lovable. You'd have to know this guy to know how beautiful this is. I was just grinning from ear to ear. This is the great choice. This is it. To remember what is true despite the storms and arrows and the pain flying around us. That's the choice. It's the hardest one, and of course, the most important one. He continues, it sucks to know that the second that I stop administering the essence of cloves, the pain from the hole in my tooth appears. Yeah, but it's also hopeful to know that the essence of cloves you just described, love, truth, faith, doesn't just numb the pain. It has a healing power. So eventually, if we do it consistently, the pain doesn't return as quickly or as often or as intensely as it once did, because the wounds heal. The metaphorical or the spiritual essence of cloves, whereas the physical stuff really doesn't heal wounds. He continues, PTSD, post-childhood stress disorder, is like the hole. It won't go away. I just have to be diligent in reaching for the cloves. Hinged on that is to make sure that I have an ample supply of it in reserve. Pretty good metaphor. But remember that the wounds really heal. Now, maybe not all of them. The wounds that happen to us early enough, they really go pretty deep. They define who we are. But they do heal, and life becomes much happier. Even if we have a few residual scars or wounds, life becomes infinitely happier. Sylvie's story. Jeanette says, I gave Sylvie a task to do, and she got distracted. And I unkindly demanded that she do what I originally asked. Totally unbothered, she simply replied, Mom, you shouldn't talk like that, because you sound like you're angry. She laughed. Jeanette did. Then on a TV show, Sylvie saw a clown chasing a dog on the cartoon, screaming, get back here, you stupid dog. Well, stupid is a word we don't use in our family, and Sylvie said, he must be angry. And that's okay. He's just learning. I love the stories about the little kids. The way loving children respond to life gives me hope about the future of the world. It's that big a deal. Somebody asked, what's the difference between letting go of the past and just ignoring it? Is there a difference? Yeah, there's a huge difference. Ignoring the past means suppressing it, hiding it, lying about it. There was a historian, Durant, if I remember, who said those who fail to learn the lessons of the past are doomed to repeat them. So we don't want to just ignore it. Ignoring the past doesn't work. The past will erupt like a volcano. We have to let it go. Now, what's the difference? You can't let go of the past until you have a loving present to hang on to. When you have that loving present, you really can let go of the past and find a home, a secure home in the loving present. That's the difference between hiding and letting go. Love. Love now. Beautiful picture. Went to a seminar recently, and the day before the seminar, I met with several people in my hotel room. And I met a 68-year-old woman. After I made the horrible mistake in the seminar of talking about her and described her as being 70 years old. She quickly corrected me that she was only 68. After spending an hour with her in the hotel room, she just wept and said she had never felt loved like that in her entire life. 68 years. We read stories of people who've been convicted of crimes they didn't commit. And they've been imprisoned 10, 12, 18. The longest I've heard of is 26 years in prison for a crime they didn't do. They discovered later from DNA evidence or whatever that they couldn't have done it. Horrible, unimaginable nightmare to be imprisoned for 18 years for something you didn't do. But here's a lady who's lived in a very real prison for 68 years for something she didn't do either. For the next couple of days, you wouldn't recognize her. She looked like a different person. We have spoken more than once since then. It inspires me that after 68 years, somebody would be willing to even entertain the notion that she could change her life. Wow. If she can, we can. Somebody wrote and said, I watched the videos and loved what I saw. I forgot about this one. And then he said, but charging for membership? Question mark, question mark. Can't I find love without paying for it? Yeah. We have a great deal of material on the free site. The fee for the membership site, we don't make anything from the membership site, not $1. It covers the creation of and the maintenance of an enormous website. We don't make a thing. Without the monthly fee, we couldn't provide any of it, the paid membership site or the free site. So, yeah, you can get it for nothing, but if everybody paid nothing, then we wouldn't have any material on the site at all. It turns out our website designers don't take I love you very much and hearts and flowers as currency. So that's why we charge for a membership. Here's somebody who says, I'm a newbie. My initial concerns with starting my life in real love, I've started using the tools from which that the books have provided me, Real Love and Parenting, for example. And as I engage in new behaviors and a new thought process, I've noticed that my husband is responding to our children's behavior in a way that is not conducive to my new learnings. How do I encourage and reinforce what I'm learning without going against my husband and defeating my new relationship with the kids? There are lots of ways to do it. Read the marriage book. It will give you some tips about how to interact with your husband, period, about everything. But you might try pointing out to your husband what is working with the children and tell him why you're doing it. Just point out some examples of where the kids are less difficult to do their homework, how they get up in the morning easier, whatever. And compare it to the past, which has not worked. So you're pointing out what we did before we had difficult, angry, rebellious children who were not cooperative and didn't do their chores and fought with each other. And now, frankly, does it really matter what it is that we're doing? I mean, if it was just waving cloves of garlic in the air over their bedtime each morning, wouldn't that be worth doing if the kids were happier? So you say, so I'm just trying some new principles and they're working. And then ask him if he would be willing to just try it as an experiment. Sometimes people will try something as an experiment that they wouldn't do if you told them this is what we're going to be doing the rest of our lives. What do you got to lose? But you're right. You don't want to press what you're doing with the kids in a way that would disrupt your relationship with your husband, because if you and your husband are tense and having conflicts, the kids are going to feel that. And the effect of the love being sucked out of the room by your conflict with your husband is going to more than offset anything that you learn in the parenting book. You'll have to kind of figure it out as you go. If you have some specific questions about it, let me know. Here's somebody who says, I've been dating a woman for a few weeks and I've gotten to the point that I stated to her, which was in my match profile in the beginning, that partnering in a relationship based on real love was one of the most important things for me, as in a deal breaker. Of course, when people read the profile, nobody gets that or understands it. And no, they wouldn't. How could they? They don't know what you're talking about when you talk about unconditional love. You just will talk about quarks and other subatomic particles. You continue. So I want to introduce her to the principles of real love, but I don't want to come across as a controlling person or criticizing or from a superior position. It's easier than you think. We're afraid when we're dating, well, we're afraid, period, to do this, but especially when we're dating, we're afraid to introduce these principles that matter to us because we don't want to be seen as controlling. But you're not controlling her. This is important to get for everybody who's dating. You're simply stating what your standard for a partner is. That's all. You're saying, my standard for a partner is right here. You're not telling that person to jump over the bar at that height. Nope. You're just saying, there's my standard for a partner. If you change that standard for any reason, you're dead. Because then you'll get a non-loving relationship and you will hate it. Now, she has a choice. She's not stuck. She can meet that standard, choose to, not forced to, and create the possibility of a partnership with you, or she can just refuse or resent it, which is really the same as refusal, in which case you have all the information you want. If she chooses not to meet the standard that you set, then what she's doing is choosing not to be your partner. I'm sure she'd be a lovely partner for somebody else. Game over. But you didn't control her in any way. She goes on her merry way, continuing her life as it's always been. No controlling. You continue. She displays a lot of anger and blames other people for it. For example, her daughter, she blames. People who drive, other drivers on the road, people that are controlling her ability to get licensed in her particular field. She's just always mad and blaming somebody. And I've attempted to talk about others, that other people don't make us mad with some of the real love stories, but she is not getting it. If you continue in a relationship with somebody who doesn't get that one essential principle, you know, other people don't make us mad. I mean, that's right in the beginning of pretty much every book. If you don't get that, you're not going to get the rest. It's going to be a nightmare. You said, so she has expressed an interest in real love. She believes she knows what unconditional love is. She believes she practices unconditional love, which is pretty obviously not true. And yet she has all this anger directed outward. So pay attention. Her expression of an interest in real love so far is meaningless. Doesn't mean a thing, because she's not even trying to understand a principle that is a cornerstone not just of real love. Who cares if anybody ever uses that phrase? But it's the cornerstone of a loving relationship. If she believes that people can make her mad, memorize this, you will be the next person to make her mad. And it's going to happen over and over again. And you're going to become just like her daughter and other drivers and licensing boards, and you're going to end up being blamed for everything. Because the closer you get to a blamer, the more they blame you. You say, here's what I'm thinking. I could send her the website URL. Coward. And some information that I have for her to read on her own and discuss with me if she's interested. If that goes well, I could invite her to a group meeting, but not act as a wise person for her. Yeah, it's a start. But, you know, you're talking about a lifelong relationship. I wouldn't go much further in this relationship without requiring a meaningful next step. That is, if she wants to continue in a relationship with you. Reading out loud with you from a book, coaching, something. You've already been with her for a few weeks, and you said from the beginning, right in your profile, you said, real love is what will guide my relationship. Now, I realize everybody lies in their profile, and most people read a profile and then they never refer to it again. But you weren't kidding, and you remind her of that. You say, this is no surprise. I told you this from the start. To continue without some kind of meaningful progress is just wishful thinking. You just prolong the inevitable. Find out early on. Not pushy, just saying, come on, it would be just like, I mean, what if you said, I'm Jewish, I'm Baptist, I'm pick a thing, a member of the Elks Club, and the most important thing that guides the happiness in my life is I'm an elk. And anybody who marries me would have to become, or would have to be an elk, or a Christian, or a Baptist, or... And then she reads your profile, contacts you, and has absolutely no interest in being an elk, or a Baptist, or a whatever. Well, why would you keep dating such a person? See, you're wanting to find out sooner whether this is possible. And that's only going to happen as you say, we're at the point where you either learn about it or I move on. And when they do that, you're controlling me, thinking, oh, don't fall for that. It's just foolishness. Just say, well, then it's not a problem. It's time to move on. You continue. Any suggestions? After what happened with the last woman where it all blew up, I've decided not to date anybody from the local real love community, which didn't work out that well. But I realized that I'm then dealing with somebody who doesn't have a background in real love, and I certainly don't want to seem pushy, controlling, or critical. It's not pushy. Again, it's not. We're so afraid. We're afraid to be pushy with our dates. We're afraid to be pushy with our children. No, we're saying, here's our standard. You're saying, I said from the beginning, real love matters. If you're profoundly interested, let's go forward. If you're not very interested, not the kind of marginal interest, you know, like when women ask guys, when women say, I really love to dance country western, and they say, do you? And the guy goes, yeah. When he's never been on a dance floor in his life, not that kind of interested, no real interest, then I'll just move on without you, and you'll move on without me, and nobody loses. Find out sooner. It gets harder the longer you go. Now, here's a kind of similar situation, but not. And I'm going to do them back to back so you can see the similarities and the things that are different. Here's somebody who says, I've read Real Love and it's taught me a lot about myself and my relationships. I'd like to think I actively practice the principles of real love in my everyday life. My struggle is with my boyfriend of 6 years. So this is a little different than the 3-week one. I really want to get married and start having kids. He doesn't. Well, he doesn't because he's afraid. And he's afraid of not just marriage and kids. I promise you, he's afraid of a lot of things. I've never met somebody who was calm, assured, confident, felt loved, was loving, and was afraid of just one thing, afraid of marriage. No. His fears will interfere hugely with your happiness, and certainly any possibility of raising a happy child. If he's not willing to marry you after you've expressed your interest in it, strong interest, for 6 years, it will destroy your relationship. Why? Because if you stay in it, you're living a lie. You will not be in harmony with yourself, which is the definition of integrity. And if you're not in integrity with yourself, how do you expect your partner to be in integrity with a marriage? Impossible. You get to determine the standards of a long-term committed relationship for you. Then other people, your boyfriend or whoever, get to decide whether they're willing to meet your standards or not. Done. Full stop. You lower your standards, you'll be sorry. You continue. We love each other dearly, maybe. And I really find him to be a special person deep down inside. Just so you know, every couple that gets divorced starts off with words just like this. I've never met somebody who has taught me to be a better person, truly. We haven't had any breakups in our 6 years and no blowout fights. Well, except for last month when I found some emails that he'd exchanged with another girl, which were sexually inappropriate. And now I'm having a hard time trusting him. Are you hearing yourself? You're describing this guy. You're trying to convince me that he's the right guy for you. And then you describe all these things that make a relationship impossible, not just difficult. You really want to not be alone. And that's why you're pushing this. I've been doing this for 1,000,000 years. His cheating is a huge thing. And you're ready to just, blow it off and dismiss it. You say that he's taught you to be a better person. Not enough. Drugs taught me to be a better person, but I'm not going to marry them. That's not enough of a reason. Despite his good qualities, and we all have them, you really don't know him. You really don't. You think you do, but it's pretty obvious you don't. His fears and his pain are enormous. They'd have to be, because, one, he's fighting, not just resisting a little. He's fighting against what you want badly in a relationship. And two, already, as your boyfriend, he's so unsatisfied that he's cheating on you. I mean, that's a 1-2 knockout punch, honey. He's had an emotional affair already, and you have no idea, because he was already lying to you about the emotional affair. You had to find it. So you have no idea whether this affair has been sexual. He'll lie straight to your face. You continue. He's worth it to me to give a second chance to, and that's why I'm still with him and working through it. It's not so much that he's worth it, it's that you're afraid of being alone. Or you wouldn't be with somebody for 6 years who has said, go stick your head in a toilet about the thing that you want most, to get married and have kids. I'm not telling you, anybody who's listening, that getting married and having kids is the right thing to do. Nope. You've just said that it's important to you, and he's saying, I don't care. So you're not seeing that he doesn't, you just said, I'm still with him and working through this. He's not working through anything. He just gets afraid and withdraws and gets angry. That's not working through. And if he's doing it now, before you're married, I promise you, it just gets worse. You say you should also know that he has a daughter from a previous relationship. This just gets deeper. The daughter's now 13 years old. He never sees her because her mother is a horrible person and won't allow a relationship between them. Listen slow, kid. He picked the horrible person, for one, and I promise you that there are huge warning signs in this. I've worked with a lot of divorces and child custody cases, and with almost no exceptions, I can tell you he did something or failed to do something to contribute to not seeing his child. If he were a genuinely loving man, as you portray him to be, and he'd wanted to see his child, he'd be seeing his child. They don't just take guys and just pitch them in the ditch. There are guys who claim that that happened, but I've just seen hundreds of these. He did something to make this like this. Either just gave up and didn't have any interest in seeing the girl, whatever. And there were things he did to cause the breakup. And he's not admitting to those. He's blaming the mother for being a, quote, horrible person. I'm not criticizing him. I'm just telling you from huge experience that he's not as blameless as he's projecting. And he's already starting to do some of the same things with you, and you don't want to see him. Let's count them just so far. So he's cheating on you. He's resisting making a commitment to you to even marry you when that's what you want. He makes excuses about his previous relationship and his daughter, and he doesn't listen to what really matters to you. These aren't little issues. They're relationship ending issues, and they get worse. The old time heals all wounds. Who came up with that? Time eventually ends up in death, and I suppose that heals all wounds, but no, time tends to make wounds worse. Ask somebody who has an infection. He just doesn't work through stuff. He just blows it off and ignores it or lies about it. You say, the reason I bring it up is because I feel like it's had an impact on his own fears about being with and loving somebody forever in the traditional marriage sense, because in his mind, he's done this. He's played house before, in his own words, and look how that ended up. The tragedy, honey, is that he's probably right. He probably will ruin this again. You said, I want to be married and have kids with him. Well, then get that. Get marriage and kids. Don't settle for what you have. And if he doesn't want to get married and have kids, like as in now, the longer he's put you off for 6 years and you've fallen for his excuses. Why would you wait another 2 weeks? I'm not kidding. And if he says, well, I need time because, oh, have I heard that one? If he says, well, you've had 6 years. What do you need another year for? You say, this is my ultimate dream and goal in life, and he knows that. He would be an amazing father to my kids, and I know that. This is with exclamation marks. You really don't know that. You're very optimistic, and it's just very sweet. But it's also kind of dumb. You're optimistic, but it blinds you to the truth. This guy gives every warning sign you can, except for being a meth lab operator, that he's not going to be a really good partner or father. You're not seeing the warning signs that we talked about. You say, marriage is important to me, and although I don't need it to have kids, it's what I want. See, you get to. I didn't grow up with this notion of a perfect marriage and then perfect kids. It's just something I want for myself and for us. You get to have it, but you don't get to want it for him. You just have to put your standard out there, and then he either agrees to be your partner in the way that you ask, marriage, or he doesn't. If not, my dear, as painful as it might be, get out. I wouldn't give you my opinion, but you wrote asking for it. And I would get out like in 5 days. Out. No emails, texts, nothing. Messages sent by covered wagon, the Pony Express. Out. Because he's going to keep making excuses. He's been successful in keeping you there for 6 years, honey. He's pretty persuasive. You say, we've talked about this many times, and in his own words, he says, I feel like I have a gun to my head. We've been together for 6 years, and now suddenly, how do you say suddenly after 6 years? We're supposed to get married and have kids. I've heard all these excuses, like, 100 times. He's just justifying his fears, which will interfere with everything. He's a wounded man, and he's not addressing it. And then he sees your needs as a gun to his head. So imagine now that you're married and you have a child, and he says, well, it's your turn to, take care of Junior because he's crying in the middle of the night. And he says, oh, so what? You're holding a gun to my head? Are you getting the pattern here? What he does here, he's going to do over and over again. You continue. He said, there's nothing you can do to make me be ready for marriage. I just don't believe in it. You hear this? He doesn't believe in it. And yet, elsewhere you said that he said, well, someday I'll be ready for it. No, he won't. He says he doesn't believe in it. And then he continues with the thing that many guys, especially guys, say about marriage. It's just that whole song and dance of it. The wedding, and it's just a piece of paper, and why do you need that? Boring. All people who are afraid of marriage use these excuses. Every one of them. They say, what's the big deal about a piece of paper? And I respond, if it's not a big deal, then why not do it? You don't get to have it both ways. They have no answer to that. They're just afraid. And it will destroy your relationship. Again, I'm not saying all people should be married. None of my business. But if that's what you want, then get it. And if he uses these flimsy excuses, he does not care about commitment like you do. And it'll kill your relationship. Get out, kid. This is just going to go on and on and on and on. Don't waste the rest of your life. She goes on to describe that, she's getting older. I'd tell you her age, but I said I wouldn't make it specific enough so you could identify her. She's not that old. But, if you wait till you're 60 to have kids, after it's too late. Set a standard for what you want in any relationship. You're not making anybody. If they don't meet it, then they don't want you. There, done. I know a lady whose husband, Fred, had bullied her physically, verbally, and emotionally. It was intolerable. He was making her life just living hell. And I taught her how to just tell him what she would do and would not do, as opposed to him bullying her into anything he wanted her to do or not do. This is different from standing up for herself. We use that phrase a lot. Therapists love it. You just need to stand up for yourself. So you got a bully who's already standing up over you, and now you're going to stand up to the bully. No, so now we have attacking versus attacking, and the bigger one's going to win. No, you just decide what you're going to participate in, as opposed to being bullied. So she writes to me, this is months later. She said, things are going pretty good here. I've had so much less worry about how Fred is going to feel from moment to moment. I've been calling him now on his bullying me. The first time I did that, he got so angry, denying it. And then, for example, the other day, he refused to go to the family party that we were planning on later. And he stormed around the house saying, why would I want to go with somebody who's accusing me of bullying? Why? Bullies are really pretty hysterical because they're really just cowards. And they just bluster to get what they want, to cover their fear. So he responded to your pointing out his bullying with more bullying. And that is why you have to point it out to him, because he really doesn't see it. And all his life, if anybody tried to point out his bullying, he bullied them until they shut up or did what he wanted. And of course, then that proved to him, in his own mind, that he was right, that he was not bullying. You see? If a bully just beats you up with words, then eventually you do what they say, then they go, see, what I told you to do is the right thing. Most of us live in worlds of our own manufacture. And we stay that way because we just don't allow anybody to move any of the furniture. If anybody doesn't fit in our world, we either throw them out or we manipulate them to fit in our world. And that's what your husband has done all of his life. You say, over and over, I said that it was his choice whether he wanted to go to the party. And I simply got ready to go. I would just kiss you on the forehead if you were here. You continue. I said I was leaving, and he followed me out to the car, slamming the door, trying to get me to not go until we had a fight. I just refused to engage in the fight and left. Oh, bless you, there has to be a medal for this. I went to get gas in the car, and then I called him, asked him if he, had decided whether he wanted to go or not. And if he did, I would come pick him up. He had calmed down and quietly said, yes, I'd like to go. I love to see these great big blustering bullies. Well, then if you want to act like a 4-year-old, you can stay here and sit on your little porta potty and have a little fit. And then they go, No, I want to go to the party. The rest of the day was great. Dear, remember this event if you ever get confused. You really can change your life and your marriage. Anybody who's hearing this, remember this story. People need help seeing their behaviors. It's not mean of you to point it out. It's not even selfish. It's loving. I get asked this question every other day. How can it be loving to point out that somebody's doing something wrong? How can it be loving to say no? How can it? It's loving. Why? Because not pointing it out leaves him in his own little crazy world of delusion and misery and loneliness. If you don't point it out, who would? His kids have learned to run away from him. His ex-wives left him. Somebody's got to help him. You continue. There have been so many instances where I've seen that I would have previously fallen into the pattern of, oh no, Fred is unhappy, so what can I do to make him happy? It's clear that I've always had a choice, and I haven't done what I'm doing now. This has been so amazingly different. I'm not afraid of his reaction, and more importantly, I feel so much stronger in every area of my life. The other day, I asked Fred's teenage son for the first time to do something that Fred didn't do, clean some garbage out of the street that the cat had ripped into, and he just went and did it. I was stunned. I was surprised at how good it felt to just speak up and not be afraid to ask for something. I mean, can you hear Handel's Messiah in the background? Hallelujah. This confidence is not an accident, kid. You persisted in making calls. You trusted that you were really being loved. You felt loved and you remembered it, which we've talked about on these chats, 1,000 times. You are an example of how real love works. You find it, you trust it, you remember it, you share it, and you're happier. Look at you, Miss Happy and Confident, and you didn't have to face down the bully. No, that doesn't work. When somebody pulls a gun, you pull a gun, you've got a gunfight. No, there was a guy here in Atlanta who was in the courthouse, grabbed the gun of one of the bailiffs, and I can't remember if he shot some people. I think he did. And there was some lady in the courthouse who just started talking to him and said that she understood how he must be in a lot of pain. And I don't remember all that she said. She quoted some Bible verses to him. Whatever. She was gentle. And he gave her his gun. It melted my heart. That's what your husband is doing. Because you're just confident and kind and loving. You continue. You can imagine that Fred initially wasn't happy at all with my refusal to play the game that we usually play. Well, yeah, of course. He's very attached to his old world. Even if it's crazy and delusional and miserable, he's used to it. So he feels very unsettled when somebody comes in and moves the furniture around. He's a blind person. I mean, it's a very old joke. What do you do to torture a blind person? Move the furniture. And that's what you're doing. You're moving the furniture, and he's getting used to it. You say sometimes he can be very intrusive. Like, he'll ask me who was on the phone when somebody calls me. I mean, even if it's like, a telemarketer. Or he'll follow me around so he can hear me talk on the phone. Then he asks me about, well, why did you say this on the phone? And what did that mean? And what did the other person say? And in the past, I've always acquiesced. I've always answered his questions and felt intimidated. It's crazy behavior that he does this. Like, insane. It has to stop. If he ever follows you around like that again, go into another room. If he follows you into another room, which he will, go outside. A woman one day said to me, well, but then he follows me outside. And I say, well, then get in the car. She says, well, he'll follow me. Not at 30 miles an hour, he won't. Get in the car and leave. What he's doing is intolerably intrusive behavior. Imagine if he did this to somebody at Arby's. Well, what was that phone call? So what were you saying? And followed them out to their car. They'd call the police. Well, it's intolerably intrusive with you too. Then you tell him you're going to do that in the future too. No more suspicions, no more lack of trust. Wrong. Every time you give in to his suspicions, you just enable his fears. You feed them. You confirm that he had something to be afraid of. You continue. So I guess what I'm saying is I've been so much more peaceful. I can feel it. But it hasn't helped our relationship sometimes. I just feel like it's not working. He's just not getting the reaction, or I guess I would call it the negative attention, which he used to get from me, and he says I'm pulling away from him. If he thinks that I'm not doing things the way he expects, he'll sleep on the couch and then tell me that it's clear I want to be alone. So not only is he a bully, but he's really a kind of sad, weak little victim. Well, I guess you just want to be alone. He's being a child. I just don't talk about it afterward, which I'm not sure is the right thing. I'm so proud of you that you're not being manipulated like a slave. The things he does are nuts. Paranoid, controlling, bullying. If you participate in them, it rewards him and motivates him to do it even more. So either he will finally catch on that his craziness doesn't work, or he'll get even crazier, at which point either he will leave or you will have to make that decision. Either way, you win. You can't live in a relationship like this. You're a prisoner. Now, you are feeling more confident and happy, but if you don't keep that up, you're going to slide right back into prison. No more fear. So now he'll either get it and be happy, or he won't. But you won't be manipulated anymore. If you really want to see if he's serious, this is just an offer. Read to him this entire email. Really. What you said to me and what I've said back to you. You're going to learn a whole lot if you have the courage to do that. Here's a man who says, months ago, I told you the story of my 26-year-old daughter. The relationship has been strained for many years, particularly after I married my present wife. During our retreat with you in Georgia in October, your response was, well, when do you want to do something about this? My response was, now. So you had me get up and you sat me down on your lap and held me and loved me, and I felt loved by you and by the whole group. When I got home, I met with her, my daughter, and I let her know that I loved her, and that was never going to change. And she could count on it from that point forward. And that began a completely new relationship for the two of us. While my wife and I were on a recent trip, I was surprised that she emailed that she really missed us and couldn't wait for us to get back. How delightful is this? You trusted being loved, and look at the result. When we did return, you say, she immediately came down to visit and has stayed with us a number of times. Most recently coming down for what was supposed to be an overnight visit and ended up being 3 days. She didn't want to go home. She loved being with us, the girl who used to avoid me like a disease. She loved the guest bedroom we provided. She slept more soundly and peacefully than she has in months, she says. She loves our house. She loves our dog. She loves our weather. She loves everything about being with us. We spent yesterday chatting for a long time on the back patio, and though she kept saying that she needed to leave, she stayed. When she reluctantly climbed in her car, there were I love yous and hugs all around. It's just kind of freakishly cool, isn't it? I mean, it gives you chills to hear it. It gives me chills to read it. A relationship that was, and with a little love, transformed. You continue. Telling her that she was loved is one thing, but then we showed it to her on a regular and continuing basis, and that's what made a difference. You're right, just I love you. When our behavior doesn't match, it actually makes things worse. You say the relationship is now wonderful, and has an ease that I've never experienced before. I'm also blessed to have a partner, my wife, in real love, who reminds me regularly to practice the principles with my daughter, which has absolutely transformed that relationship. This stuff works. And I have real love, my wife, and our amazing community to thank for having my daughter back in my life in a way that is teaching both of us the power of loving. What a lovely story. And there are people all over the world who are doing this. You made my whole day. It's just not all that complicated. We read books and we talk about issues and we go into the details. And, you know, this man could have gone on and on about what he'd done and what she'd done to him. And you can do the he said, she said till you're dead. I said, what do you want to do about it? Or when do you want to do something about it? He said now. And he just trusted me to love him. He trusted everybody in the group to love him. And then he went home and he shared it. So he's a perfect example of what we always say. Find it, he did that. Trust it, he did that wholeheartedly. Remember it, he did that. And then he shared it. If we do the same, we can transform our lives just as this man did, and transform our relationships just as this man did with his daughter. And look at the beauty of the result. Really works. We'll see you in a week.